Good morning. This is a VirtualPBX admin training. Just getting ready here, making sure the audio is transmitting properly, as well as streaming properly. This training will take approximately an hour and a half. There'll be some variance depending on load times, etc. But since it is 10 a.m. Pacific time, let's go ahead and get started. If you have any questions about a feature I am working with, please feel free to use the chat feature within YouTube here. And also be aware that we do record the trainings. So if you can't be here for the whole training, you can leave. You can come back and watch the recorded trainings and still get all the content. Likewise, you can then get the link and share it with other staff members who need it. All right, so let's go ahead and get going here. We've got my Dash login page up here and running, and this is at dash.virtualpbx.com. You can get here from the virtualpbx.com website. Just on the website, there's a blue bar going towards the top of the page, and there's a support link there. But there's also a login link there, and that will take you to this page here. To get logged in, we need your email address, your password, which is hopefully emailed to you, and the account name, which is typically your company name. Now, if for some reason you don't have all of that, or specifically the password, we have a forgot your info link right here to the bottom right above that sign-in bar. Again, we still need your email address. That's how everything's tied to your email address. And then we need either the account name or a phone number that's on your account. You would fill out this form, click on Reset Password. The system's going to send you an email. It's going to have a link that will allow you to reset your password. After you do that, it's going to log you right back out. So then you can come back here. And the main reason it logs you out is, one, it helps you remember your password to type it in again. That muscle memory kind of thing. But also, you have the option to click on Remember Me, so that way you don't have to remember necessarily. All right, let's go ahead and get signed in. Now, I'm using a test account that I have logged into several times. So when I log in now, it takes me directly to the login page. For anyone new, right? So this is your first time signing into your Dash account, the Dash wizard pops up and you actually start off on your account page, which I can get back to by clicking on my name at the top right. And here I see my user information. The main thing people would change here would be their own password. Right? So as an admin, if I wanted to change my own password, I come to my user page here and I can change it. Now, as an admin, I also have this account level settings here. The main thing people change here is the time zone. Right? Make sure I believe the system defaults to the Pacific time zone. Now, this is a test message, or a test account, excuse me. But on your accounts, on your live accounts, you're also under the user section here on the left. You're going to have a billing section. That's where you can update things like your credit card. You can see previous invoices. You can see what your service plan is. And you could also update who the billing contact is, right? The person who gets the invoices, and they're actually technically the person who controls the account. Now, when you're done with this, over here at the top right, over by your name, in the top right corner here, click on the little close button, and you'll be taken to your dashboard. You're still going to have little pop-ups come up as you're on your first time logging in on the dashboard page, on the users page, and on the groups page. Right? This is the system just trying to tell you how to make use of these particular features. All right, so along the top here, right, I've already talked about you can click on your name to get to your account page. Most of you, to the right of your name, you'll have a Dnd toggle for Do Not Disturb. Right, so you can click on that, and you're on Do Not Disturb mode. Basically, it's white when it's on, and you're not going to be offered calls. Right? The reason I don't have it is my user is also part of an ACD queue, which is an add-on feature, and ACD queues and Do Not Disturb do not work well together, cause problems. So whenever a user is assigned to an ACD queue, the Dnd toggle is removed from them up here at the top. We got the little question mark or help icon. This has some sub-tabs here. So chat with us. This will open up a chat window, typically at the bottom right of your window of your browser. You chat with a support person to help you walk you through a guide, right, or a feature set. Learn more. This will open up a new tab in your browser, take you right to the support pages, and you can look at the guides with screenshots and in some cases videos about how to set up a particular feature, as well as for setting up VoIP phones. The web phone link will not always be here, right? This only shows up if your user has a web phone already assigned to them. If you have it, it will open up a new tab, taking to webphone.virtualpbx.net, and allows you to use Chrome or Firefox on a computer to make and receive calls. And then we have the online store. Again, opens a new tab. It takes you to store.virtualpbx.com, where you could buy things like a physical VoIP phone or a router, etc. We got the menu icon here, or the hamburger icon, right? 3 horizontal lines. This takes you to other dash features. We are in the dashboard. Let's get back, right? And that's where we're going to be primarily for the majority of this training. But we will touch on these other areas. And then we have the logout icon. Right here in the middle, total users, right? These are 18 people I have on my account who can make and receive calls. Most of our plans are based on the number of users you have, right? So the more users you add to your account, the higher your bill is going to be. Then I have total devices. I have 28 devices. And then I have a breakdown. Now, Dash was designed with VoIP phones in mind. If you don't already know, VoIP, it stands for Voice over Internet Protocol. And all that means is using your internet connection to make and receive calls. Now, on our devices here, we have the first heading here is soft phones, software application that makes use of your internet connection to make and receive calls. That's all it means. I've got, looks like 11 soft phones, and these include the VirtualPBX soft phone app. This could include a third-party app. So let's say XLite from Counterpath or Zoiper or any number of dozens of other soft phone applications out there in the world. All right, web phone. Technically, it's a type of soft phone, right? Because it's using a browser, which is software, to make and receive calls. Again, it's restricted to Chrome or Firefox, which, by the way, is what we recommend to use to access Dash, right? Chrome or Firefox. Again, it's a it has its own heading because it was developed later, right? Soft phones were at launch, whereas a web phone was a couple years later. Also, we don't charge for the web phone. Next heading is the cell phone. That's pretty self-explanatory for most of us. And then lastly, I have active on my account here is a SIP phone. This is a physical device, right? So this is a phone that sits on someone's desk, but it's a type of VoIP phone, right? So VoIP is a general term, right? Covers all types of ways to use the internet to make and receive calls, right? SIP is a subtype of VoIP phone. It's a particular sub-protocol. So if you're out shopping or just online shopping, right, just make sure for any physical phone you buy that it says it's SIP, right? SIP, like a sip of water. SIP compliant, SIP compatible. That way you have a chance for it to work with us, and we can get into a little bit more about the supported devices. Down here, I have unregistered devices, and this is in relation to my SIP phones. It is saying that 3 of them are unregistered, and that means we can't send calls to those devices. Now, that could be simply means they're not plugged in, right? It could be that there's some kind of network issue or router setting that needs to be adjusted. Could be even that there's, at that particular location of that phone, there's an internet outage of some sort. Next up, I have total numbers. These are phone numbers on my account. I have 29. In general, for most customers, your plan includes anywhere from 2 to 15 phone numbers as part of your monthly plan price. If you go over that allotment, you're going to be paying an overage per number per month. Right? So I am paying for probably about 14 phone numbers on top of my normal monthly plan price. And here we have a couple breakdowns. So first, assigned numbers and spare numbers. Assigned number means you're using it. It goes someplace, right? So it can be like one of my main numbers that you see up here at the top right, as well as a conference number, a number that goes directly to one of my users, a number that goes directly to a group, etc. Right? Spare number counts towards my allotment, right? So I'm still being charged for it. I'm just currently not using it. Could be it's for a future project, right? Future expansion. Let's say I'm moving into a new market, right? So I already got the phone numbers for that new geographic area. I just haven't put them in use yet because I haven't actually opened the physical location there yet. Right. Second breakdown I have USDID and US toll-free. US toll-free is actually US Canada toll-free, right? 800 number, 888, 877, etc., all the way down to 833 currently. USDID just means a US local number, right? So if you want a number in Elmira, New York, you can grab that. It would show up under USDID. Likewise, a phone number, say in Portland, Oregon, would also fall under that USDID umbrella. You can have international numbers on your account, excuse me. If you're interested in acquiring one, you want to email our porting team, and that's PORTING at virtualpbx.com, and they need to know the city and country that you're interested in. If we can acquire a number, we will let you know. If there are additional requirements, usually some sort of documentation, we'll also let you know what those requirements are. We'll not be able to get you a number until those requirements have been fulfilled. And that's all coming from the other country and their telecom regulatory service. All right, conference bridges. This just means I've enabled conferencing on 2 of my users. Right? I have 2 active conference bridges. That means 2 of my users are moderators for conferences. Here at the top right, we have my main company numbers. Right? So these 4 phone numbers all behave in the same fashion. They're all going to the same location. They all have the same main greeting. Down below, I've got my conference number. Right? You can have multiple conference room numbers if you want, but they all end up at the same spot. And then there's individual conference room numbers that you would join. And everyone, whether they're your staff members, your vendors, or your clients, that's the number they call to join a conference. Your fax box number, you're allowed to have 1 main fax box number. This is your inbound fax number. It also lets you set up your faxing permissions. The company directory, oops. This lets you download a CSV file, shows your staff members' names, their extensions, and their primary devices. The soft phone directory, this is something for use with the VirtualPBX desktop soft phone application. It's available for Windows and Mac OS. You would download this file and upload it to your soft phone application, right, from VirtualPBX. And that allows you to see the status of the other VirtualPBX soft phones on the account, right? So if my entire organization uses the VirtualPBX soft phone as their primary VoIP device and only device, for instance, then I would know who's on a call and who's not, right? So I know, oh, Mike is on a call. I can't call him right now to talk to him about a particular project we're working on. Now, if you're in a situation where people have mixed devices, right? So let's say you have coworkers with a Yealing phone and the VirtualPBX soft phone, right? The soft phone directory won't show you the status of that Yealing phone or Polycom phone, etc. Right? It's only going to show you the status of the other soft phones on the account. All right, store discount code. Just for being a VirtualPBX customer, you get a discount code for use in the online store. Right? That's store.virtualpbx.com. And then we've got the account realm. The account realm is used in a couple things. One, it's one of the 3 pieces of information you would need to program or provision a third-party soft phone. Right? So that X-Lite from Counterpath, or even a physical VoIP phone that didn't show up under our SIP phone list, which we'll be getting to later. The other thing it's used for is to send a fax out. So once you set up your main fax box, and it's the email permissions field that you have to set up, but basically you then create a new email. like you normally do, right? And so like instead of create an email to cousin Bob, instead of Bob's email address in the to field, you remove that. You would put plus sign, the number 1, then the area code and phone number that you're faxing to, the @ symbol, and then you cut and paste your account realm. And then you just need to attach a PDF or TIFF file and click send. Right? The system only looks at the to field, the from field, and the attachment. It doesn't look at the subject line. It doesn't look at the body of the email, and it only will send out 1 attachment. Right? So you don't want to send 5 attachments in 1 email because the system's only going to pick 1 and send that, and the others will all fail. Up here on the top here, we have company caller ID, right? It's just labeled caller ID on the dashboard page. This pull down, which unfortunately does not work properly on the stream, shows your main numbers, right? So these 4 phone numbers over here to the right, that's what it shows. You can choose any one of them. Then you have the option here for filling out the company caller ID name. This allows you to enter in up to 15 characters, including spaces and special characters, that we then would transmit as part of your outbound caller ID from any of your VoIP phones by default. Now, the other thing you have to fill out then is the company emergency information, or E911. The system wants a North American address, and then you would click on Save Changes. Once you click on Save Changes, right, the company caller ID name information gets transmitted to the other carriers who support CNAME. It takes them approximately 3 business days to update on their side. We can't control that. So when you pick up a VoIP phone, you make an outbound call. By default, the system is going to display this phone number that you selected as your outbound caller ID, and it's going to transmit this company caller ID information, right? The CNAME information. It's possible that when your call goes out, it goes through a carrier that doesn't support CNAME. If that happens, that means your CNAME information does not reach your destination, right? The other thing to keep in mind is when you're calling cell phones, right? The cell phone carriers, right? AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, etc., right? Those carriers, they control the information that shows up on the cell phones on their network, right? So they're the ones who put in spam risk or telemarketer. Some of those carriers will not provide or not transmit the CNAME information unless their subscribers pay for it. I looked into this a few years ago. My carrier, they want to charge me $10 a month to have the CNAME information show up on my cell phone. I personally didn't feel that was worthwhile, so I chose not to pay it because I think I pay them enough as it is. So that's something to be aware of when you're making test calls out and you're calling your cell phone. You may not see your company name information show up. Hold music. On Dash, hold music is defined as after a call has reached a user and that user has pressed hold on their VoIP phone. That's when your hold music file will play. Dash does allow you to upload your own files. You're restricted, I guess, or you're allowed to upload .ogg, .mp3, and .wav files. You want to make sure they're recorded in mono and that they're under 1 megabyte. The mono part especially will help you save on the file size. You find the file on your computer, you would click the little up arrow icon and then click on Save Changes. Now the hours icon here is actually part of main number, so I'm just going to go to main number. This page can sometimes take a while to load. First up, we have our main company numbers. So these are my main numbers, right? These are my main, the default numbers my customers call. That's how to think of them. You can obviously have multiple numbers. If I decide I no longer want to use a number as a main number, right, I can click unassign next to it. Now, that does not delete the number from my account, right? It's now a spare number. So I can use it someplace else if I want to, right? If you wanted to add more numbers, you have 2 options. First up, we have add from spare numbers. If I can highlight it, there we go. You can click on that. It's going to bring up a little window and it's going to show you my available spare numbers, right? So these are numbers I already have. So I can then check on the box in front of one and then add selected numbers if I want to use it here. Likewise, I have the option here to buy numbers, and you have the option here for local or toll-free. Toll-free, choose the prefix you want to work with, right? So like 866 in this case. I click search. The system's going to tell me or show me a list of available phone numbers. Now, this list is dynamic, which means you're competing with other people in real time. So when you go through this process, when you find a number you like, click add, then you click on buy numbers. Now the system's verifying that the number was truly available and then adding it to my account. If, for instance, I had clicked add, right, so I put it in the cart, but I didn't click on that buy numbers icon, and then I went to lunch, right? Let's say the girlfriend's saying, hey, let's go to lunch. I'm like, all right. I come back from lunch, I click buy numbers. That number may not be available any longer because someone else grabbed it while I was at lunch. And this one's taking a little bit long to activate than normal. Not quite sure why. Let's go on to local numbers. So for local numbers, you need to know the area code that you want to look for. Now, it's possible when you look up an area code that you'll get this message, that there's no numbers available. Right? That indicates that that area code is exhausted. Right? 310 is one of the Los Angeles area codes. So at that point, you'd want to, actually here, we can close this real quick. We can see that 866 number has been added to my account, finally. But so if you run across an area code that's exhausted, double check to see if there is an overlay area code or a nearby area code that will work for you. Click search. Right, 424 is the overlay for area code 310. And there we go. And again, beyond that, same process, right? Find a number you like. You can add multiple numbers at the same time. Click on buy numbers, and then in this case, we're adding it directly to a main number. Any place you can add a number, right? So that includes users, groups, queues, Fax Box. You can just add a new number, right? You can buy it directly, or you can add from spare. Now, there's a little gear icon here next to each of the numbers. This is where you would update the caller ID. So you can update the CNAM information for outbound, as well as turn on the ability to accept inbound CNAM. You got E911. You can set up the address for each phone number, right? So each phone number can have a different physical address associated with it. This gives you the flexibility then to, on your VoIP phones, to assign the E911 information for each VoIP phone to a different phone number. So that way your staff members can be associated with a proper physical location. That way when they dial 911, shows up to the correct address. Prepend is a VoIP phone feature where you can add text in front of the caller ID that shows up on your staff members' VoIP phones. Right? This gives them an idea of what the call might be about, right? Especially if your people have multiple roles. And you would click on Save Changes. All right, so once you have phone numbers, then you would want to look at your office hours strategy. You default to 24-hour open office, right? This one, top one here, meaning, hey, you're accepting calls all the time. Or you can do custom office hours, which if you do, then for each day of the week, put a check mark in front of the days that you're open. And then in these boxes to the right, you select your open hours in 24-hour or military time. Obviously, if you're closed, you leave the day unchecked. And then you have the option here to say if you're closed for lunch, right? That means your whole facility is closed for lunch, or everyone at the office. And then you would click on Save Changes, which looks like is cut off on YouTube. All right, then we have office holidays. So first question, are you closed for holidays, right? If you are, you put a check mark here. Otherwise, you leave it unchecked. And then over here to the right, we have Add Holiday. You have the option for single day, date range, and advanced. Right. Single day is like I have here for New Year's Eve. right? I gave it a name. I chose the month and the date, and then I clicked Save Changes. Date range, like down here for Xmas holiday, gave it a name, start date, end date. Right? Save changes. Notice that there's no year indicator, so we do typically recommend to not include a date range that includes New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, just to avoid any potential system issue. It hasn't happened in a long time, but it did way back when, so it's a just in case thing. And then the advanced option is like I have up here for Thanksgiving, where again, gave it a name. I select the month. This middle pull down is 1st through 5th as well as last, and then you choose the day of the week. And then you click on Save Changes. All right, incoming call handling. So this is how your main numbers are handling calls that come to them, right? Office hour strategy and office holidays is when you're saying, hey, when am I accepting calls? And when am I doing it at certain times of day? So here's like, hey, calls are coming during my open hours. This is what I'm doing, right? Subtab here for after hours. What do I want to do with calls? Right? During holidays, how are calls being handled? Now the options in general that you see here are the same, right? But the settings within those options are going to be specific to the time of day. So let's say open hours calls are coming to my virtual receptionist. Now this is a link that opens up this box here. On my left, right, is the main menu. This is what people press to navigate through the phone system, right? 1 for sales, 2 for support, that sort of thing, right? Now, if you, right here, we've got, add route, right? If I click on that, this gives me a new row to work with. So this first set of pull downs, you have 0 through 9, as well as the star key and the default action. Right, this pull down is, and I'll use one up here, it's where you want that option to go to or end up at, right? So smart PBX directory, right? Dial by name directory, right? People have to enter in keys to get who they're going to speak to. Users, this means you're sending a like one when someone presses 1 on their phone, they're going to go to a specific person that you've determined ahead of time. Scrolling down, we've got call queues. So if you're making use of ACD queues, you can make a menu option go to an ACD queue. Devices, a specific phone. Now, downside of this is if that phone doesn't have its own built-in voicemail or answering machine, right, then the system will just keep offering the call until the person hangs up. Media file, right? So this is a greeting file. So you can have the system announce a message, essentially. Once that message is done playing, the system will end the call. Groups are ring groups or hunt groups, right? These are departments, somewhat related to ACD queues. Advanced call flows, this is if you're making use of submenuing. And then voicemail boxes, right? So someone can leave a message. Right, there's little different icons for most of these options, so you know what you're getting to. The default action will come into play if the person doesn't enter any option or keeps entering the wrong option. Then eventually the system will send the caller to the default action. All right, greetings. These are your greeting options. First up is text-to-speech. You simply type in a greeting. You would click Update, Save, Save Changes. The text-to-speech greeting is good for when you're just starting out, right? When you're like, okay, I'm not sure exactly how my system's going to work, or that could be because you're a startup company, or you're not used to PBX systems in general, both, right? Maybe you got hired on a week ago, and your boss says, "All right, you're in charge of the phone system," and you're like, "What?" And now you have to play with it. Anyway, text-to-speech greeting, you're limited 250 characters, not words, characters. So not super long. It's going to use a computerized or robotic sounding voice, but it's free. After you click Update and Save, it will then save the file, in this case, as your main open hours, right? Menu TTS. It reuses that file name. So if I come in here, right? So I already have a greeting in place here. If I make an edit, right? I change a line, or remove a couple words. I click update, save, and save changes. Now I'm going to have two files named main open hours menu TTS. So my recommendation is when you create a text-to-speech greeting, go to your greetings tab, which we'll be getting to later, and change that file name to something that's more easily identifiable, right? Like main greeting 1 or test greeting 1. Something that you know, okay, this is this version, so I can go back to it if you need to. Next up, you can upload your own file. .mp3, .wav, .ogg, recorded in mono, under 1 megabyte. You can choose from an existing file, right? This pull down, which unfortunately doesn't work, but shows all of your different media files, whether they're voicemail greetings, your main greetings, hold music, right? You can select any one of them. So that's why you want to change that main open hours menu TTS, because if you've got 5 of them, you don't know which one is which. You can record over the phone. Now, by default, the system wants you to use a VoIP phone to record your greeting over the phone. This is a security feature since the system knows when a VoIP phone on the account is registered, so it knows it's tied to the account. We know that doesn't work for everybody. So, for instance, you want to use your cell phone to record a greeting. What you would want to do is check under settings here, and this one here, allow outside recording. You want to make sure that one is on. Default is off. Now, but when you turn it on, click on save and save changes. Now you can call in with a cell phone or a landline and change your main greeting over the phone. Now, you would still want to review this because you need the PIN number here, right? Now, for a new account, when you first call your main numbers, and you don't have anything set up, right? The system will tell you that no greeting has been set up for this menu, and then it will ask you for the PIN number. You enter the PIN number, it walks you through recording a greeting over the phone. If on the other side, your company has been with us for a while, right, and you just need to change the existing greeting, you would call your main number, the existing greeting, right? So greeting A is playing, you can still enter in the PIN number. The PIN number, the system will recognize that PIN number, switch over to, and let you record a greeting. Now, when you do it in that scenario, you're replacing greeting A with whatever you're about to record. Right? The file name stays the same, but the content you're overriding. Usually not a big issue, just something to be aware of, like come holiday time. You don't want to replace your greeting that you use for 90% of the year and then replace it with a holiday greeting, and then you can't go back. Professional recording services, when you click order, this will open a new tab and take you to Snap Recordings, who we partnered with. They have probably about 100 voice actors and actresses to choose from, various versions of English, French, and Spanish. They handle their own billing, they deliver it to you via email, and then you would upload your own file. All right, settings, we already covered one of them, but we'll go ahead and go through all of them. The first two are somewhat related. So, number of retries on misdial and the dialing timeout. Number of retries on misdial is how many times your inbound caller can make a mistake. Right? Dialing timeout is how much time the system listens after it hears a button press before it assumes the person is done. Right? So they're looking up an extension number, so they hit the first digit and they, oh wait, and they, looking for their piece of paper or their note to enter in the remaining digits. So, say caller calls in, gets to my main greeting, and they press number 7. I don't have a menu option 7. And I don't have an extension 7 on my system. Right? Now, the system waits, right, because of the dialing timeout for 5 seconds. It's waiting to see if that person enters in a second digit after that 7, right, for an extension number. After it doesn't hear that second tone, or the third tone, if someone entered 2 and then didn't enter a third, for example, then the system says, okay, they've made an error. So now I'm going to replay the greeting because that counts as their mistake. Right? Now the inbound caller can enter in a menu option again or an extension number. Let's say they hit 8 this time, no other digits, and the system waits for 5. Now, since there's no menu option 8, no extension 8, the system then says, we did not recognize your entry. And in this case, because I have a default action here, the system sends them to the smart PBX directory. If I click on the X over here to the right and remove that default route or default action, now after that last attempt, the system will say, we did not recognize your entry, and then say goodbye and end the call. Right. Allow dialing extensions. By default, this is on. And this allows your inbound caller to enter your extension number. And then if it's a valid extension, the system will transfer it. Right. If you turn this off, that means your inbound caller can only press your menu options. Right. So if they enter an extension number, the system just treats it as an invalid entry. And then we have the suppress the playing of the invalid entry message. So if you don't want the system to say, we did not recognize your entry, then you would click this to on. Right. Any changes you make to your main menu, your greetings, or your settings, you want to click save here, and then you need to click save changes here under incoming call handling. All right. Second option here, this is the live operator answer option. Right? This basically means, hey, you're giving a staff member, in this case Aaron, a chance to answer the call first. If he's not able to pick up, then it goes to the virtual receptionist. This is a pull down, so you can select any users. You can select a call queue, right? So that could be multiple people. You can select a specific device. Now the system will only ring it for about 20 seconds before it moves on to the next action, in this case, the virtual receptionist. You can play a media file. I don't recommend this just because that means your inbound caller is going to hear back-to-back media files, and that can be confusing, or potentially back-to-back, depending on your settings. You can send it to a group. Your advanced call flows, meaning one of your other attendants. So like if I've set front desk group, now what happens is call comes in, it's offered to 5 or so people. If they're not able to answer it, then it goes to my virtual receptionist. Now, we're still in my main open hours, so it's that virtual receptionist we were looking at. If, however, I switch this to after hours, right? So again, after hours, front desk, and then I send it to the virtual receptionist. You see here, the after hours virtual receptionist is different, right? It's got different menu options. You probably have a different greeting, right? The settings might be the same, they might not. That's up to you. All right, third option here is, actually here, so you can offer the call to a person, a device, a queue, a group, a media file, one of your other attendants, or you have the option here to skip the voicemail. But basically, right, so here I'm offering it, I'm having a media file play, and then I'm sending a caller to a specific voicemail box that you can select. This is something we see for like holiday or like seasonal businesses, or like a bank on a holiday, right? They would probably just say, hey, we're just sending your callers to voicemail. Or even like a small business where the owner is like, hey, I'm taking vacation, so I'm shutting down the business for 2 weeks and I'm going to be on a beach. The last option here, this only shows up because I have multiple auto attendants on my account, meaning I could have my main numbers go to a secondary attendant if I wanted them to. All right, main conference number. Again, you can add from spare or buy new numbers, right? So you can have multiple conference numbers. The custom greeting as text-to-speech. You can enable this and then type in a greeting, 250 characters. Click save. If you leave this disabled, then when you call the conference number, the system will say, welcome to the conference. and prompt the inbound caller to enter a conference room number and then a PIN number. Main fax box number. If you don't have a fax box number, right, you'll have the option to add from spare numbers or buy new. Right? But again, you can only have the one number. And then you want to click here on Edit Fax Box. So the first box is for inbound notifications. Who's getting the email when a fax comes into your system? That's all this is for. Now, be aware that if someone dials your fax box number, hears the fax tones and hangs up, this person, whatever email address that you put in here, they're going to get an email saying that there was a failed inbound fax attempt. So something to be aware of, that you will get some emails that are false negative, essentially, right? Saying, hey, you got a fax attempt that failed. But if you weren't actually expecting a fax, then there's probably nothing to worry about. Down here, email permissions, this is designed to actually put in your company email domain. So that way, every one of your staff members can send out a fax via email without having to be a user on your Dash account. They just need the proper format, that +1 area code and phone number, @ account realm, attach a PDF or TIFF. All right, auto attendance. This is a plan-specific feature, meaning it's available on some plans and not on others. This has a couple use cases. The first I've mentioned briefly, that's submenuing, right? So 1 for English, 2 for Spanish. You would then create an English and Spanish secondary attendance. Each of those would have its own greeting, right? The Spanish attendant would have a Spanish greeting and would have menu options that go to your Spanish-speaking staff members, whereas the English would be all in English. The other reason you would have multiple auto attendants is if you own multiple businesses, right? So that way each of the businesses have their own phone number. They have their own main greeting, right? Let's say you have a cleaning business and a dog walking business, right? Probably very different greetings in place and hopefully different phone numbers. Now, in this case, as the business owner, you have your same staff members answering calls for your multiple businesses, right? Because they're all in the same account. So creating attendant up here at the top, you give it a name and an extension number. Then you click on Create Attendant. Once an attendant is created, you can click on its name and you have the option, is it unavailable in main menu, meaning that it's a standalone attendant, or available in main menu, meaning it's a submenu option, and it's going to show up available in other places on the account. And then you click on Save Changes. Over here to the right, we have the phone numbers box. This is where you would add a phone number to a specific attendant. So like if you have a secondary business, you can add from spare or buy new, and then you would save changes. Extension number. The extension number is mostly going to be used for your staff members, right? They can actually transfer calls from one business to the other by knowing the extension number of the auto attendant. If you need to change the attendant number or extension number, I normally suggest adding the new extension number that you want it to be, right? Clicking Save Changes, coming back here, and then unassign that original extension number, and then Save Changes again. And then we have the wrench icon here under Settings. This takes a little while to load. And here you see I have open hours, after hours, and holidays. Right? These times match everything we already set up under the main number, right? So your secondary attendants have to have the same hours of operation as your primary one, right? Your virtual receptionist. But beyond that, you only have the option here to send calls to a virtual receptionist. So you create menu options, a greeting, and your settings. You would click Save, and then Save Changes. All right, next up, we have the Devices tab. This shows your devices on the account. Red means it's unregistered. Like for a soft phone, like this first one up here, who's that, Cody? All right, that could just be that they're not logged into the soft phone application yet, right? Black, like this one here, that means it's been disabled, right? Turned off. Green, like I have down here, that means it's registered. up here at the top, you can add new devices. And the first one is SIP phone, right? That's that physical phone that sits on a desk or in the office. You have these manufacturers to choose from. Some have multiple or many models, some only a few. But you would want to find the make and model of the phone you want to work with. Then you need to give it a name. I usually suggest a person's name and the word phone, right? Like Bob's phone. And then you need the MAC address. This is typically a sticker on the back of the phone. If the phone's plugged in under its general settings or basic settings, or sometimes under status, there'll be an entry for MAC, MAC, and you just want to enter that information here. Then you would click on Create Device, right? And then under Users, assign that device to a specific user. Now, in terms of the dashboard, that's it, but you're not done with the phone. You need to log into the phone's web user interface, the web UI, and enter in a URL. Basically, you're telling the phone, hey, go here to get your configuration file. For the specifics of that, you want to go to our support pages and look and find the document called Auto Provisioning Phones. This will have screenshots of these various manufacturers and this proper syntax for that URL for the manufacturers. You just basically follow the instructions. The phone will reboot a couple of times, and then it should show up as a green device on the account. Also, one thing they do here is under Add Devices. Why is it? There we go. Right. For these makes, right, you can look for these specific models when you're shopping. That way you know they work with us. Cell phone and landline, pretty straightforward. You give it a device name, then you put in the number, right? And then for the number, you need the plus sign, the number 1, area code and phone number, and then you click on Save Changes. Now, let's add a new device here. All right. So here, this is a standard configuration, right? We just added this device. I go under Advanced Options. This is the default settings for that device. When the system offers a call to a cell phone or a landline, right? Under these settings, the call will come to your cell phone, you hear it ring, you pick up. Then you will hear a message from the system saying, this is a forwarded call, please press 1. When you press 1, you're telling the system, yes, you're there, and yes, you want to take this call, right? So that it connects you, you speak to the customer. And that's one of the ways you would know it's a business call, right? Versus some random person calling your cell phone. Now, if, for instance, you actually wanted to add a phone number so that it goes to an automated answering service for your after-hours calls, right? Well, your automated answering service doesn't know when to press 1, so that wouldn't work in this scenario. So what you would want to do is come to this Advanced Options page here, and click on the box in front of Allow Use of Cell Phone's Voicemail. So now when we send the call to this phone number, right, we hear that pickup tone and we connect the call. We don't wait for the 1 tone, right? And there's no message telling your automated answering service to press 1 to accept the call. It's just boom, connection, tone, we send the call through. Your automated answering service then handles the call from that point forward. Now, if this was your actual cell phone device and you had this setting in place or enabled, then what could happen is we send the call to you, your cell phone voicemail picks up. That inbound caller then ends up on your personal cell phone's voicemail box. Some people want that, some people do not. So just something to be aware of as an option. Typically, it's like salespeople are more inclined to have the voicemails directly on their cell phone's voicemail box. The other setting that sometimes come up is this keep original caller ID. By default, this is on. So customer Mary calls your system, gets routed to your cell phone. On your cell phone, you see customer Mary's phone number by default. That's what the keep original caller ID does. You don't recognize the number. Let's say you've had 5 robo dialers in a row and you're like, you know what? Well, whoever it is can go to voicemail. Customer Mary leaves a voicemail and you're not able to get back to her in time to complete whatever transaction. So what you could do instead is uncheck this box. So now, instead of seeing customer Mary's phone number show up on your phone, you would instead see this phone number, this 323 phone number, would show up on your cell phone's display. So hopefully you would recognize your business phone number and you'd be more inclined to take the call. Let's go back to devices. Soft phone. Okay, one, you should at least read and make sure you understand this message once. It's basically with wireless VoIP technology, E911, you may not be at the proper address. So on the devices page, when you add a soft phone, you can only add a third-party soft phone. Right? This means you're using an application other than the VirtualPBX soft phone app. So if you intend to use the VirtualPBX soft phone app, do not add a soft phone on the devices page. You need to add it directly on the users page. But if you're going to use someone else's app, that's fine. You would just add it here. You give it a name. You need to copy and paste the SIP username. If you click on the SIP password, then you can see the SIP password, so you can copy and paste that. And then you need to copy and paste the realm. Those are the 3 pieces of information you would need to then program or provision that soft phone application you're going to use. Let's go over to greetings. This is your greetings manager. I referenced this when we were talking about the virtual receptionist. This is where you can see all of your various media files. Unfortunately, you cannot play them back here. So if you want to listen to them, you would need to download them right here on the right. That way you can download them to your computer and listen to them there. And that way you can determine, hey, if this was legitimate or if I need to get rid of it. Now, you've got whatever the file name is. Source, right? Upload, you uploaded the file. All right, TTS, text to speech. And notice I changed this one's name. And then down here, I have a recording. This means I recorded it over the phone. Now you can click on the little gear icon here, or wrench icon, excuse me. You can always change the name of the file, right, to something you'll recognize, or you can just simply delete it if you know you don't need it any longer. You can add files up here. Basically, it means you upload, right? .mp3, .wav, .ogg, recorded in mono, under 1 megabyte. Find the file on, so give it a name, find the file on your computer, and then click on Create Greeting, and we'll upload it and add it here. Groups, as I mentioned, this is ring groups or hunt groups are terms you may have heard in relation to groups. Basically, they're departments. Up here at the top is where you would click Add Group. You give it a name, and you give it an extension number. Then you click and drag your staff members that you want to be in that group. And then you'll click on Create Group. Once a group is created, you can click on its name. You can always change the name. And then you have these group call attempts. This is how many times the system will offer calls to that inbound calls to the group members. Little arrows here to the right where you can increase or decrease it as you wish. and then click on Save Changes. Then we have the members box. Not sure why it says 0 when there's 5 people here. But here you've got your timestamps across the top. This last one you can edit. It defaults to 120 seconds when you first create a group. And then you click distribute, and that distributes the calls to your groups based on this order. Now, you can click and drag on the names to change the order. Now, I haven't actually changed the order yet because my call starts here at 0. Oops. But I can click distribute again, and now I'm first, right? And Aaron's at the end, right? Michael in the middle. As you probably noticed, these are sliders, so you can make adjustments. So I'm going to set this up as blast ringing. All right, so now it rings everybody at the same time for the same amount of time until someone picks up. Right, but I can do any sort of overlap that I want to. The main thing you want to avoid is having a gap between one user and the next, because the system will then treat it as if the call ended. So a couple things to keep in mind about groups. One, if your group members have multiple devices, then any calls from the group will ring all of their devices. Right? There's a user setting called user feature, called Follow Me. Calls from the group will ignore that setting. They're just going to ring every phone on that user. Now, group members can accept calls on a cell phone, a landline, or a VoIP phone. That's its advantage over ACD queues. ACD queues, you can only accept calls on a VoIP phone, at least currently. Now, once you've assigned members to a group, they're in the group. They have basically no control whether they're in the group or not, unless they're system admin. The only potential control they have is that if they have the Dnd toggle, right? Then they turn that on, but that means any call to them is going to voicemail, right? And then calls to the group won't ring on their phones, but calls directly to their extension would also not ring on their phones. Get back here. Now, since you notice the change didn't take effect because I hadn't clicked on Save Changes yet. You can add more members down here at the bottom left. Right, it's just going to give you a list of people to add and choose. Also, you can remove individuals from your group over here on the right. Groups can have extension numbers, right? They can have multiple extension numbers if you want. They can also have their own phone numbers. Now, this phone number, since it's not a main number or auto attendant number, it doesn't have hours of operation, meaning that this phone number is available 24/7. So something to be aware of. And then groups, have features. So ring back. So by default, when we send a call to your group members, your inbound caller will hear that ringing sound being piped back to them that we're getting from your staff members, right? So let's say I'm offering a call to Michael here. Say Michael's a group member or a member of this group, right? So we're sending calls to Michael. When the system hears his phone ringing, right? We get that ringing tone coming back from his device. That's the sound where by default we're piping back to your inbound caller. If you want to replace that, then you would enable ringback. You would upload a file, right? .mp3, .ogg, .wav, recorded in mono under 1 megabyte. Click on Save Changes. Now, this file will play, again, as long as we're getting that ringing sound coming back from your user. If for some reason their phone doesn't give us that ringing sound, let's say it gives us a busy tone, for example, the system doesn't play back anything to the inbound caller. It just plays silence until it goes to the next user. All right, next action. If you enable it, you have to tell the system, what do you want to do if no one picks up? This is after all of the group call attempts have been made. This is a pull down. You can send them back to your virtual receptionist. You can send it to one of your secondary attendants. You can send calls to a call queue, a specific device, right? So a specific phone. You can send it to a different ring group. You can send it to a specific user, or you can send it to a voicemail box. And then you would click on Save Changes. Allow call forward. If you turn this on, that means you're allowing your users to make use of call forwarding of their devices, i.e. they're not at their normal phone. And then caller ID prepend, if you enable this, this is for your VoIP phone users, right? You can add either text or numbers that will show up in front of the caller ID on your staff members' VoIP phones to give them an idea of what the call is that they're dealing with. All right, numbers. This takes you by default to your numbers in use. This lets you see where your numbers are being used. You can't unassign them here or assign them anywhere, but it just lets you know where they're at. Got the little gear icon here, so you can update the caller ID of the E911 or the prepend for any numbers. Spare numbers, these are numbers you're not using. So if you actually want to remove a number from your account, then you would click on the little box in front of it and then click delete up here at the top. You confirm the deletion, and now the numbers are removed from my account. So now I'm saving a little money on my monthly bill. Now I can buy new numbers, right? Local and toll free, just like I can anywhere else. And in this case, it just adds them as a spare number, right? Meaning I'm going to allocate them later. The port link here, this starts the port request. Choose local or toll free, choose next. Then it asks you to upload a copy of your bill. And then you affirm that it's within 30 days. Then it asks you for the phone numbers or numbers that you're porting, the address associated with it. You can then download a blank letter of agency and or upload a completed and signed letter of agency or LOA. You need to input like your email address, and you can enter a preferred date that you want the port to complete by. You want to make sure it's at least a couple days ahead of time or in the future. And then there's 4 boxes you need to make sure you check on, and then you click submit. Right? Then the system grabs the files, uploads them. You'll get an email right away saying, hey, you started the port request. By the next business day, you should get a second email from our porting team that lets you know a person actually looked at your port request. Now, if there's a problem, let's say you didn't include your copy of your bill somehow, or it didn't come through legibly, for instance, they'll let you know and say, hey, this didn't come through, can you resend? Once the porting team submits, we have to wait at that point. Local numbers, on average, take about 2 to 3 weeks for the ports to complete if everything is correct. Toll-free numbers, about 3 to 5 business days, again, if everything is correct. If there's a problem, right, we get a rejection, we will pass that information on to you after we verified that there wasn't a typo made somewhere along the line. Right? As long as we can say, hey, everything is correct or matches what we see on the LOA and or the bill, then we say, okay, we did get an error. This is what we get back. Now, we often do not get very specific details. Like we can get address mismatch. Sometimes that's all they tell us, is that the address didn't match up. Sometimes they say, oh, the street number was wrong. Right? So whatever information we get, we will pass on to you, and then hopefully we can get that sorted out. All right. Users, this is where you add new users. The little gray person, right, is your standard user. The person with the blue suit, that's your system admins, right? So they can do any of the things we're talking about here. Up here at the top, that's where you would add a new user. Enter first name and last name. The email address used for login needs to be unique for each user, right? So you can't reuse an email address for everybody. Then as a system admin, you create a password for them. And then you enter in an extension number. Now, the system will make a suggestion based on the first extension number you created on the system, right? So this one started with extension 1000. So it's saying, hey, the next one available is 1017. But you can change that to whatever you want. Now, by default, the system wants to create a voicemail box for the user. That voicemail box is intrinsically tied to the user. Then you can choose to be included in the user directory. Then we've got send emails to an alternate address. So by default, the system will send emails to the whatever email address you use for the login information, right? So voicemail notifications go to the email address used for login. If for some reason you don't want that, or the user doesn't want that, then you would click on here and then enter in a different email address. And then lastly, send credentials to the user. I say you check mark this, but some people don't. If you just need to create one user, you click on create user. If you need to add multiple, create user and add another. Once a user is created, you can click on their name. Right? You can change their name. You can change their credentials, right? The email address and their password. Right here is the option to resend the password reset directly to the user. Here's your option to send emails to an alternate address. Here's the option to put them or remove them from the user directory. This pull down allows you to change a user into an admin or an admin into a user. This is the time zone for that user. So if you have people in multiple locations, you can set them up in the correct time zone so their voicemail timestamps are correct, for example. This is the display language, little flag icon here. You have your choices of English, French, German, and Russian. Dialing timeout measured in seconds, the default is 20, which is plenty of time for a landline or a VoIP phone. To a cell phone, you might, if your users are only going to use a cell phone, you might want to increase this to 30 or 45 seconds. Basically, when we send a call out to a landline, actually, when any call goes to a landline company, for example, right, landline phone number, call reaches the landline telecom, they go, oh, we know where that is, sends it straight through. Versus call coming to a cell phone carrier, gets to the carrier, they said, hold on a second, we need to find them. Right, ping cell phone towers, finds you, then the call gets sent to you. That delay, right, that time trying to find you is why you would need to have a longer route ringing duration for calls coming through a PBX system. Users can have multiple extension numbers if you want them to. Users can have their own phone numbers, right? Add from spare or buy new. Just again, just like in groups, right? This phone number is not a main number. It's not an auto attendant number, so it doesn't have hours of operation, right? So it's available 24/7. Devices, you can add from spare, right? So you created it on the devices page. This is where you would add device here, or you can add new devices, right? SIP phone, cell phone, etc. The soft phone, and you still get that warning message. But here on the user page, you have an extra option. Right here at the bottom, it's kind of hard to see. It says use third-party application. If you click on that, it flips it and says use VirtualPBX application. Now, I'm getting a warning message saying that the email address on this user is already associated with a VirtualPBX soft phone. So now I'm not going to be able to use it. But in general, for a user that doesn't already have an email address associated with the VirtualPBX soft phone, actually, I might be able to find that. Well, let's see if I can find that real quick. Oh, not coming up right away, actually. There we go. Let's try that again. All right, so now I just need to give it a name. And then I can click on Create Device. And then I would click on Save Changes. Once I click on Save Changes, Aaron gets an email saying, here's your login information, and here are download links. They can then get the app and make and receive calls on the app. And once they log in, it would turn into a green device. User has that features, right? So if they have their own phone number, you can make use of the caller ID number feature. This just means outbound calls for Aaron will be his phone number versus the company phone number. Virtual text, this is new. This allows texting on various phone numbers. You would turn this on. You select a phone number on the account, and that's usually a auto attendant or main number. And then you click on Save Changes. Oops. Once you do so, Aaron will get an email saying, welcome to virtual text. He will be at the same level of access as his Dash account, right? So he's a standard user on virtual text. He'd just be a standard user versus, say, Giovanni here. If I added virtual text to him on this account, since he's a system admin on my Dash account, he'd be a system admin in virtual text. You'd want to check our feature pages about the virtual text feature, and I believe we'll be having a YouTube video specific to the virtual text feature shortly. But it's a way to share numbers between staff members so multiple people can monitor texting for your main number, for example, right? So that way you can respond to customers. You can send their canned responses, etc. Right, voicemail box, this feature was enabled when the user was created. Transcription is actually a plan-specific feature. It's where the system listens to your voicemail and tries to type it out to you as part of the email notification that you get. By default, voicemail email is enabled, and that just means this here. We're attaching an MP3 file to the email notification, right? So then you can just double-click on it and listen to it on your computer. Your voicemail boxes can hold up to 100 messages each. After that, the voicemail box is full and will not accept any more, which means either you or a staff member would need to get into that voicemail box and start deleting messages. You also have the option here to delete after notification. That just means once we send that notification email, the system will delete the voicemail box, or the voicemail from the voicemail box, meaning that voicemail box will not get full. The potential downside for that is you're not going to have any other way to check voicemails, right? You can only check it via email. Follow Me is a feature that's best used with someone with multiple devices. So here you need to tell the devices which phones you want to ring by unchecking them. Again, you have a timestamp up here you can edit. You can click distribute, and just like in the groups, right, I can click and drag and change the order as I see fit and save changes. Fax Box, users can have their own Fax Box if you want them to. If you click enabled, then you need to decide, are they going to are you going to use a phone number, right, a spare number, a buy new number. You can also use an extension. The downside of using an extension is that means this user can only ever receive faxes. They're never going to be able to fax out. Because what happens is when you have assigned an extension number, the system uses that extension number as the outbound caller ID. Typically, extension numbers aren't very long or not long enough to count as caller ID, so the outbound fax will fail. So in general, I recommend making use of a phone number if you can have a fax box on each user, or on an individual user. Excuse me. Conference bridge. Once you enable it as an admin, you just need to create a PIN number for them. Right. I usually just matches it to the conference room number or their extension number, especially if you're using 4-digit extensions, and then click on Save Changes. Your users can update their conference room PIN numbers themselves via the user portal. Call forwarding. You have off, on, or failover mode. Your users can turn call forwarding on themselves. Right? They can either do it via the user portal. They can also do it via feature codes from a VoIP phone. Failover mode is something you would have to set up as an admin. You choose a mobile or desktop to phone, and then you put +1 area code and phone number, and then you click on Save Changes. And failover mode basically is when the VoIP phone on the user becomes unregistered, right? Goes red, and a call happens to come into that user at that time, the system will then automatically forward the call to the phone number you designated. Customized call recording. Excuse me. Wow, my voice is going. So by default, it looks like this when you first enable it. You need to tell the system what kind of calls you're going to record. Inbound internal means it's a coworker call, right? So coworker Bob called me. Inbound external, customer called in. Outbound internal means I called coworker Bob. Right? Outbound external, I called customer Mary. Every account includes at least some amount of storage included with it. You want to, and then there's an overage if you go over it. For the specifics of that, you'd want to talk to our account services team. Right, music on hold. You can choose to have your users have their own hold music if you want them to. Just upload a .mp3, .wav, .ogg, recorded in mono under 1 megabyte. Do not disturb. If you turn this on, that means calls are not going to be offered to their devices, meaning calls go to voicemail. Hot desking. This is a VoIP phone feature, probably mostly used in like for people going to hybrid scheduling or shared office spaces. When you enable it, you just need to create a hot desk ID. Up to you if you want to include a PIN number or not. And basically say, Aaron comes into the office. All right, he sits down at desk number 2. He picks up the VoIP phone that he's sitting at. He hits *11. That turns on hot desking. The system then prompts him to enter in the hot desk ID. And then calls will then be sent to him at the phone he's sitting at for the rest of the day. End of his day, picks up the phone, hits *12, and now hot desking is off. The next time he comes into the office, right, let's say someone else is already sitting at desk number 2, he just sits at number desk 22 instead. Same process. All right, *11 and hot desk ID, and then he's good to go. Okay, sorry about that. Voicemail boxes shows your voicemail boxes on the account. User voicemail boxes have their name associated with them. You can create your own voicemail boxes up here at the top. Just give it a name, a voicemail box number, and a PIN number. Once a voicemail box is created, you can click on the little wrench icon here. Now this, you can review this information or even change the PIN number, for example, if you need to update it. Under advanced greeting media, you can upload the voicemail greeting file, right, directly to the media section here, or the temporary, right? The temporary is for the out of office or vacation voicemail greeting. So if something is selected here, it plays, right? It supersedes the media file. Once you choose temporary, once you select the pull down to go to none, then the media file will play. That is whatever media file is selected. Recipients, your user voicemail boxes already have one built-in recipient, right? The email address used for login, that's a recipient. If you need to add additional recipients, or if you created a voicemail box here, right, you would just click add recipient and enter an email address. If you only need to add one, then you would just click on save changes. If you need to add multiple, you just click on this add button and it'll create a new row. You just keep adding email addresses until you're done. Once voicemail boxes have a media file in place and a recipient in place, you can check already set up. That means it's ready to go. One other thing to know of is announce only mode. That's if you want a voicemail box that's just there to give out information, right? So hours of operation, directions, that sort of thing, right? And that way, if you have announce only mode checked, that means your inbound callers won't be able to leave a voicemail on that voicemail box. Advanced routing, this is where direct inward system access is, or DISA. DISA allows you to call into your system from a cell phone or landline, log in over the phone, and then make an outbound call. When you make that outbound call, it's not your cell phone number that's displayed as the caller ID, but your main company number. If you click on this, you would click Enable. And by default, it automatically creates a PIN number for you. Now, this is, at this point, you could set this up as a menu option on your virtual receptionist. I don't recommend that. I suggest click Edit Settings, add an extension number, and then create an extension number that's not part of your normal sequence. All right, so if I'm on extension 1000s, I'm just going to use something starting with extension 7 or the number 7, right? So that way it's not easy for someone to figure out. So now you can call into your system that goes to the virtual receptionist, right? One of your phone numbers. Enter in this extension number. The system will prompt you for this PIN number. You hear dial tone again. You enter an area code and phone number. You make an outbound call. Now the person you're calling, they won't see your cell phone number show up, right? They're going to see this 323 phone number as your caller ID. Now, by default, DISA is not enabled on new accounts, mostly because if someone figures out the PIN number, they can potentially make outbound calls on your account and you wouldn't know about it, right? It opens you up to potential fraud. So this is something you'd have to talk to our account services team about to have enabled. Now, one way to know about calls that are happening on your account before your invoice shows up would be under the call logs. So here you can see your call history, and this is I'm just on today's. Looks like Mark made a call out, and this looks like he may have used DISA, or it might have been an inbound call that came into him that hasn't completed yet. So we can go back a little bit further. A green arrow to the right, that's an inbound call that came into the system. And you can see what device it went to, and it looks like was answered on since it has normal clearing next to it. And then here you see that's an outbound call from a soft phone that went to this particular phone number. So that lets you know, okay, that was an expected outbound call. Now, you can download these files as a CSV file, right? This is the month range, so I can download that. Under custom, you can select your date range. The system will let you go back to up to 1 year for your call logs. Beyond that, the engineers can go back up to 18 months. That does require us to escalate the issue. But they would then be able to get those files for you. If you need call log information for compliance reasons, I recommend that you download every month. And that way, A, it's an easy, monthly reminder. It just shows, and you can label it by the month. That way you have that information. Feature codes, I've commented on a couple of these already. This allows your VoIP phone users to access Dash features directly from their VoIP phone. This information is also available on our support pages, both as a feature codes document and also under a document called the Phone Commands Cheat Sheet, which is a one-page PDF. That actually has more of a write-up about what each of the, or at least a brief description of how to make use of those feature codes. All right, so next up, we've been on the dashboard, so we'll go over to Blacklists. This is an included feature. This allows you to create a list of phone numbers that you're blocking from reaching your system, right? You're not allowing them to connect. So you would click Edit Blacklists over here, and you would click Add to create a new list. Or if you already have an existing list, you can click on that list. All right, you would give it a name, and then you choose, are you blocking anonymous calls or not? Right, so if we're not getting a valid inbound caller ID, do you want the calls to go through? Then you leave this off, right? If you want to block those calls that aren't presenting proper caller ID, you would then turn this on. Beyond that, here you click add number, you put +1 area code and phone number, right? No parentheses, no dashes, no spaces, just +1 area code and phone number. And keep clicking add until you're done adding phone numbers, and then click on save. When you're done, you go back to settings. You make sure that your list or lists, if you have multiple, are over here on the right under selected, and then you click update. Now those lists are active, so any phone numbers on these two lists, when they try to reach any of my main numbers, or actually any phone number on my account, they get a busy tone. Call recording. This will have two different potential outcomes. One, it will open a new tab and take you to recordings.virtualpbx.com. That uses your Dash login information where you can view your recordings, play them back, delete them, download them. Or if you have AWS, have your Dash account linked to your AWS account, if you click on this, this will show you your AWS interface, essentially, so you can see your recordings on the AWS site. Monitor is a plan-specific feature. This allows you to see the status of your staff members. Doesn't matter what phone they're using. It will show if they're on a call and what device they're using. Active inbound calls, right, which show you your staff members on individual boxes who are on active calls or active inbound calls. Parked calls would show up as a list as well, and they would show the parking spot number for that individual user or that individual caller. Reports is a plan-specific feature. This is advanced reporting. Basically, you create your own reports. We have a demo of this on our YouTube channel. It's an advanced reporting demo. So I would encourage you to check that out if you're interested in it, excuse me. But clicking on this would open a new tab to take you to reports.virtualpbx.com. You would log in, and then you could create and view your reports. Voicemails is your voicemail manager. As an admin, you can get to any voicemail box on the account. And you can then see what voicemails they have, date, the time, who they came from, what phone number they were dialing, the duration. You can play back the file. You can download it. If you click on the box as an admin, you can move it to a different voicemail box, as well as change its status. Integration AWS, plan-specific feature, but essentially, if you're going to integrate with AWS, this needs to be enabled. So this is where you would store like your call recordings. You could store faxes, and I think you can store voicemails at AWS just with this integration. ACD queues. ACD stands for Automatic Call Distribution. It is a call center feature. This is an upgrade to existing plans. So it's possible you may have to change plans, and which could change your costs, and then have an upgrade to add a queue. Each queue has a, you're paying per queue. So you'd want to talk to our account services team if you're interested in. Now, an account can have either a standard ACD queue like we have here, or ACD queues Pro. On the YouTube channel, there's a demo for the Pro queues, right? So ACD queues Pro demo. I would search there for that because, as I said, I can only have one. So I'm showing the one that we don't have a demo one. To create a queue, right, you click Add a New Queue. I'm just going to click on the gear icon here next to an existing queue. All right, so you give the queue a name, and then you choose either an extension number or a phone number for that queue. And then you have the routing strategy. Unfortunately, the pull downs don't really work on this stream. Round robin will equalize out over time. You also have most idle, which means whoever's been waiting the longest for a call gets the next call that comes in. Then there is least calls, right? Least amount of connected calls. Whoever that is gets the next call. Least offers, the least amount of offered calls. So missed and connected calls would get the next call. And then on standard queues, you also have ring all, which means it rings everybody. The Pro queues do not have the ring all option. Then we have hold treatment, which is slightly covered up here, but you can upload a media file, right? .wav, .mp3, .ogg. The Pro queues, you can have multiple media files, right? Play one after the other, announce position and line, or announce expected wait time. The queue timeout, this is how much time your inbound callers can wait on hold, measured in seconds, right? So this is basically an hour. The queue call limit, how many people can wait on hold? Now, when I have 4 here, that means that's 4 people can wait on hold on top of who's already speaking to my staff members. If I change this to 0, that means there's no limit. All right, timeout immediately if empty. If this is enabled, that means if I have no staff members logged into the queue and a caller, inbound caller comes into the queue, the system treats that caller as if they've already hit that 3,600 seconds. The escalation call flow after timeout is, after that 3,600 seconds, what do you want the system to do with the call? You have a pull down here, and you can select where you want it to go, right? So you can send it back to a main menu, another queue, another ring group, particular user, etc. The zero out call flow, if you select something here, that means you're allowing your inbound callers to press 0 while they're on hold, and then you choose where they're going, right? User, group, another queue, main menu, etc. Agent behavior, agent recovery time, measured in seconds. How much time after an agent is done with the call do you give them before the system offers them a second call from the queue, right? Like to have a drink of water, to finish their notes, etc. Force away on reject or missed. If this is enabled, if an agent misses a call, the system will automatically put them in away mode, meaning they have to mark themselves available again to take calls. And then agent connect timeout is 20 seconds, which is the default, which is should be plenty of time because your agents can only accept calls on a VoIP phone. And then you would click on create queue or save changes. Once a queue is created, you want to click on the little members icon here. This list of people are all the people who are available to be in my ACD queues. They may not be assigned to a specific queue yet, but they're available to be so. Now, if I click on manage members, right, that list moved over here to the right. The list on the left are my other users who are not yet associated with the queues. If I want to add someone to be a queue member, I just click on their name and then click add on selected, or add as member, excuse me. You can add multiple people at once, right? Likewise, if I want to move someone out of the queues, I would click on their name and then remove as members. and then I would click back here on the little queue icon, little stacked boxes. So in a queue, you'll have options here, right? So I can see the staff members, agents. If I click on that, that allows me to add agents, right? So I can add Michael and Peter to be a queue member. I could also like remove Gene, for example, and click on Save Changes. I can also now click on managers. Once you've added agents, then you can click on managers and choose existing agents to be managers, right? You just click and drag them over and then save changes. For your staff members, right, once you've assigned them to the queues, right, the next time they log in, they can mouse over the little menu icon, they can click on queues, and they'll come to this page. I'm going to go ahead and log out here real quick. All right, so I start my day, I click on Begin Session. Right, the system has logged me into the queue, and I'm started off as away mode. And especially that first time logging in, or any time the user has a VoIP phone change, right? So you added devices or removed devices, they want to click on this little phone icon here, and then they need to select one of their VoIP devices. Ideally, it would show up as green, because that way you would know it's registered. So let's get into the app here. But once they select the device, then they can mark themselves as ready. Now, once they're ready, this just means they're ready to take calls from this queue. Now, if my VoIP device is not registered, I'm not going to be able to accept a call, right? Because my VoIP phone isn't working. So let's refresh my queues. Right, so now it shows as green. That's the device I select. So now, when calls come into this queue, right, it's going to be offered to me, and since I have a registered VoIP phone, it's going to ring on that device. When I go to lunch, I would mark myself as away. At the end of my day, I would click End Session. Right, so that's an advantage queues have over groups, is that your users can manage when they're taking calls from the queue themselves. Dynamic caller ID, this is a plan-specific feature, available on some plans, not others. This allows you to create rules to change the outbound caller ID for your VoIP phone users. So I'll click on this one here. So you give it a name, you select the phone number on your account, and then you choose how it's implemented. In this case, I chose the area code. So whenever my staff members dial a 408 area code, the system will automatically change their outbound caller ID to this 408 phone number. All right, the other one here, this is a feature code. So now my staff members have a little more work to do, but basically on their VoIP phone, they dial *550. Then they enter the area code and phone number of the number they're reaching out to. When they do that, the system will change their phone number to be this 323 phone number. Right, and then I would click on Save Changes. Faxes is an included feature. This allows you to see your fax activity on the account. You can get to any fax box on the account. Inbound faxes here, you can see the date, the time, phone numbers involved, number of pages. You can download them. The outbound fax page, let's go here. All right, so for a failed attempt, this means we had a problem communicating with the other fax machine in some fashion. All right, you see the date, the time, phone number involved. You can download the file. If you click on the little last icon here for details, sometimes in the details, you'll get further information about what happened. Unfortunately here, we only see that the success flag was just false, so we don't have any further information. But sometimes you can see things like your user busy, right? Meaning the line was busy, or there was a disconnect tone during the process. which can be like someone picked up the handset on a physical fax machine. The email to fax logs, this will show problems with the system processing the initial fax request, meaning we didn't actually dial the other fax machine number. Now, this could be because someone was using a bad email address. They might have had the incorrect format. You can click on the eyeball icon here, and you'll get additional information. So like in this case, someone was using a Gmail email address, right? That's not on my email permissions. That's why it failed, right? Someone basically used their personal email address instead of the work email address. Like this one here, no valid attachment. This could be someone didn't include an attachment, or they included attachment, but it wasn't a PDF or TIFF file. All right, number manager, included feature. This just takes you to your spare number page. You can buy numbers, etc. Webhooks is a plan-specific feature. This allows you to link Dash to other software. This requires at least some level of programming, so that's something to be aware of. You'd actually need to talk to our sales team as they have more information on this. You can also look at or go to the website developer.virtualpbx.com. You will see samples of code and of what we have done in terms of linking Dash to other software. Additionally, on our YouTube channel, we have an introduction to Zapier webinar on the YouTube channel, which covers webhooks because that's how we link to Zapier. So that will give you an idea of things that can be done. And then lastly, we have the user portal. Every user has their own portal. As an admin, I cannot get to any other user's portal, but then I can get to everything, so it doesn't matter. So, but for users, they start off on the voicemail tab. Now, this will only populate if the voicemail boxes are set up to not delete after notification, right? So if my voicemail box was set up to delete after notification, there'd be nothing here, right? Because the system already removed them. But as a user, I can listen to my voicemails, I can download them, and I can change their status. Now I can go to the call history tab to view call history for myself. If I had my own fax box, I would see my fax history here. The contact list tab shows the contacts within your Dash account, right? So I can see the other extension numbers for other users, for groups, for auto attendants, queues, etc. That's not something your users can add to. Right? System admins can, but that's because they're adding it to the account as a whole. The conference tab over here to the right is where your users would adjust their PIN numbers, as well as are people joining muted or deafened? Are they playing entry and exit tones? Once you're in a conference, up here at the top, you can invite other Dash users to your conference. You can lock a conference so other people can't join in. You can mute everybody. You can unmute everybody. And then you can hang up, meaning you end the conference. Also, when you're in a conference under the participants, each participant's going to have their own little box here. So you can mute a specific person or kick out a specific person, for example. All right, settings and devices. This is, again, your user portal. So this is where your users would set up their own call forwarding, right? Just click on the box. They put in the +1 area code and phone number. They click on save. And then they can see the status of their devices. All right, and we're back on the dashboard. That is everything I had to go over today. I don't see any questions popping up, so I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. I thank you for your time today, and we will be back here next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time.